Greetings from UN Global Compact Network Sri Lanka. Our next session is titled, What Does a 1.5-degree Future Mean to Business? The latest IPCC 6th Assessment Report affirms the indisputable human influence on the climate emergency. The UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, says that the IPCC AR6 is a code red for humanity. To reach net zero emissions from human activities must decrease from 33.9 gigatons CO2 per year in 2020 to 0 gigatons per year by mid-century, requiring emissions to be halved by 2030. According to the World Meteorological Organization, at the current trajectory, there is a 40% chance that the global temperature will hit 1.5 C in one of the next 5 years. This session will elaborate on the importance of a multi-stakeholder approach to translate the code red for humanity into local business climate action by exiting fossil fuels by 2025 and illustrate the need for urgent action by nations, businesses, and multilateral organizations to require setting science-based targets to accelerate progress towards a zero carbon future by 2030. Simultaneous Sinhala and Tamil language interpretations will be available throughout this virtual event, and we encourage all attendees to utilize this facility if preferred. The interpretation option is available at the bottom portion of your screen. The session is interactive, and we encourage attendees to use the Q&A function to pose questions to the session panelists. Please tag UN Global Compact Network Sri Lanka and your participation in MGGLB Sri Lanka when sharing on social media. The Network Sri Lanka social media handles will be available in the chat box shortly. We warmly welcome the following panelists to commence the session. Mr. Arjun Bhargava is a climate change consultant with the UN Global Compact Network and works on communications to accelerate net zero global campaigns. Mr. Bhatia Mulubunla is the Chief Executive Officer of LPTIA Plantations PLC and serves on the boards of Atkins Spence Plantation Management PLC and LPTIA Plantations PLC. Dr. Roshan Rajadure is the Managing Director of Hilly's Plantation sector and is responsible for Kalini Valley, Thalawakale, and Horana plantations. Ms. Shirani Asaratna currently serves as a Director of Sustainability Agenda Private Limited, which focuses on enhancing sustainability practices and biodiversity conservation within the corporate sector. She also functions as a Senior Advisor to Biodiversity Sri Lanka and to the conservation arm of Dilma Ceylon Tea Company, Dilma Conservation. The session moderator is Dr. Ravi Fernando, Chairman, CEO of Global Strategic Corporate Sustainability Private Limited and board member of UN Global Compact Network Sri Lanka. He was the UN Global Compact focal point from 2007 to 2011 and set up the UN Global Compact Network Sri Lanka. He serves on the Sri Lanka Sustainable Development Council since February of 2021. Dr. Fernando, over to you.
Okay, a very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and it is indeed a privilege to have such an august panel with me to talk about what does a 1.5-degree future mean to business. I want to rephrase that topic by saying initially that if we cross 1.5 degrees centigrade, which is based on an 1880 base year, when we started the Industrial Revolution, we are talking of the gathering of momentum in terms of heat on the planet since 1880. So if we look at 1880 and we look at where we are today, we are already nearly at 1.2 degrees centigrade. And 1.5 degrees centigrade is not far to go. And the WMO warning that we are most likely to cross this by 2025, which is 3 years from now, should get everyone understanding we are talking of a serious catastrophic situation in terms of crossing the 1.5 degree boundary, which we have always been talking about for the last 20, 30 years. Now, how long have we known that crossing 1.5 degrees centigrade can lead to a catastrophic destruction of global GDP to the tune of between $54 and $67 trillion if we don't stop this. 54 to $67 trillion in a global economy of 90 trillion in the next 3 to 4 years. So if that doesn't wake all of us up into urgent action to exit fossil fuels, which the world hasn't done the last 35 years, then nothing will get us excited about doing something. So today, the panelists will be talking mainly about 1 or 2 suggestions to every single one of you listening today, which you could take on board and mobilize in your company, in your organization, so that you are part of the solution and don't remain part of the pollution. Because if you remain as part of the pollution, then you are directly responsible to creating a climate emergency and a code red for humanity, which will happen in the next 3 years as per WMO, and a very high chance of doing that. So how do we get out of fossil fuels? And what are fossil fuels? Coal is the primary fossil fuel that is ruining the planet. And any company directly or indirectly getting energy from coal is then complicit in being part of the code red for humanity. Petroleum and diesel, we need to get out of. And last but not least, we must remember that some of the biofuels are also contributing to massive deforestation in the world, and that is not a good idea either. So with those few words of introduction, I'm hoping that every single one of you today are going to have 1 or 2 very clear guidelines of what you can do by the panelists who have done it, and who are going to share with you not more than 2 very direct, incisive actions to control our contribution to creating a devastating plus 1.5 degrees centigrade situation that will devastate global economies like never before. And let's not forget, every day we are seeing what is happening in the climate emergency on our television sets. I think the World Weather Reports should be renamed World Extreme Weather Reports. And every day we are seeing global devastation to the tune of between $300 to $400 billion per annum now. And extreme weather incidents have gone up from about 7 to 10 in the 70s to nearly 700 now per annum. So with those few words, I'm going to invite our first panelist, and I'm going to invite Arjun, who works with the climate action team in India, to give us an overview of what is Global Compact's 7,000-8,000 members doing, and what specifically have they been able to do to reduce the 1.5 degrees, and give us also an overview of India. Arjun, over to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure for me to join you today. I'd like to thank the Global Compact Local Network in Sri Lanka for the invitation, and Dr. Ravi and Janani for their introduction. Most of you are probably familiar with our work at the UN Global Compact. Our organization is the world's largest corporate sustainability initiative and has more than 13,000 companies and 3,000 non-business signatories based in over 160 countries and 69 local networks. I'm with the climate team with the UN Global Compact based in New York. You've heard from Ravi about what science expects of us. Based on existing commitments from countries, the world is on a catastrophic pathway to 2.7 degrees of heating by the end of the century, instead of 1.5 degrees we all agreed should be the limit. We're already witnessing the dire and devastating consequences for our people and planet, and every 1/10 of a degree of warming matters. Business as usual is just not an option. Our milestones are clear. By 2030, we must halve global emissions, and we must achieve net zero emissions by 2050. At the UN Global Compact, corporate climate action is central to our mission. We are driving it ambitiously through the Science-Based Targets Initiative, or SBTI for short. Launched in 2015, the SBTI is a partnership between CDP, the UN Global Compact, the World Resources Institute, and Worldwide Fund for Nature. It helps companies calculate how much carbon they must remove from their productive processes to align with the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement. SBTi has become the de facto standard for climate ambition in the corporate world, with more than 2,000 companies signed on so far, with over 700 of them participants from the UN Global Compact. When companies involved in SBTi set targets for cutting emissions, independent experts validate them to ensure that the targets are robust, credible, and based on climate science. And SBTi companies are delivering, which is the good news. A recent analysis found that businesses setting science-based targets have successfully reduced their greenhouse gas emissions by an average 25% since 2015, a contrast to the 3.4% rise in global emissions since 2015. The avoided emissions from these companies achieving such steep reductions equates to the annual emissions of 78 coal-fired power plants. During the lead up to the 2019 UN Climate Action Summit, the UN Global Compact took another important step. In close cooperation with SBTi, we launched the Business Ambition for 1.5 degrees Celsius campaign. Backed by a global coalition of UN agencies and business leaders, the campaign calls on companies to align themselves with the crucial goal of limiting the global temperature increase to 1.5 degrees. To date, Business Ambition for 1.5 campaign has engaged more than 965 companies. This campaign is also part of the Race to Zero campaign, which is setting a course for net zero carbon emissions by 2050. To keep the 1.5 degree goal of the Paris Agreement within reach, we need all hands on deck. To this end, the Science Based Targets Initiative recently increased minimum ambition in corporate target setting to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels, no longer accepting well below 2 degrees temperature targets. The increased ambition provides clarity to businesses to ensure they're setting credible emission reduction targets to help prevent the worst effects of global warming on people across the world. SBTi has now developed a global standard for net zero to help establish a shared definition of what a credible net zero commitment means for business. The standard will be launched tomorrow. Every company's long-term net zero goal must include ambitious interim targets to demonstrate continued progress, and therefore any credible non-zero corporate strategy needs to place science-based decarbonization at its core. Carbon offsets will never make a business model align with the Paris Agreement. Earlier this year, the Global Compact and our local networks also launched the Climate Ambition Accelerator program, which is engaging over 670 companies in 55 countries. These companies, including small and medium-sized enterprises, will gain access to best practices, peer-to-peer learning, capacity building, and training to mainstream science-based targets. The Sri Lankan local network is also actively implementing the Climate Ambition Accelerator program, and 20 companies are already benefiting from it. The next round of the accelerator is in preparation, and we hope many of you will be able to join us in 2022. We also urge more companies to join the 8 others from Sri Lanka to set science-based targets urgently, because we really have no time to waste in the race against the terrifying impacts of climate change. I thank you. Back to you, Dr. Ravi.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Arjun. Thanks for those words. And I hope all of you understand that it is crucial that we move forward in attacking this problem with absolute urgency. And Arjun made a very important point that we have no time to lose. And understanding that we don't have time to lose is the beginning of this whole exercise. This year, the last 3 years, we have seen a massive destruction of the Amazon forest. And it is quite amazing that even as we look at the whole situation, that these last couple of years have been one of the most disastrous years for the Amazon. And the destruction of the Amazon, unfortunately led by a leader who didn't quite respect the science-based factor, we saw the Amazon destroy from being a 20% contributor to the world's oxygen. We suddenly have the Amazon rainforest now giving us 0%. What will happen if somebody goes into a hospital room and switches off the oxygen that a patient is needed? He or she will be basically accused of having committed murder. But here we have a situation where 20% of the world's oxygen has been devastated. So with that, I'm going to invite our first panelist, Shirani Yasaratne, who of IUCN fame and now working with Biodiversity Sri Lanka, to tell us what are the one or two things that she would recommend every single one of you on this program do with urgency for the climate emergency. One of the words that I'm missing in all of this is the word urgency, because I'm seeing too many people thinking of the climate emergency or the code red for humanity like another walk in the park. This is not a walk in the park. This is a code red for humanity and a crisis. So Shirani, over to you.
Thank you, Ravi. I hope I can be heard.
Yes, you can. Thank you.
Okay. So before I start on, giving one or two very urgent messages to our business community, I would like to first start off with a little background on Sri Lanka's forestry sector. Now, as there are lots of statistics on the forestry sector, forest estimates in the country, but the official statistic is that we have 29.15% of our land area is forested at the moment, with 22% of that forest cover under dense forest and about 7% under degraded conditions. Now, we also have to bring out the fact that Sri Lanka is one of the biodiversity hotspots in the world, together with the Western Ghats of India. And as such, we have a huge and unique biodiversity, which is threatened at the moment. Also, I would like to bring out the fact that economically, the gross value added generated by major woodlots and wood products in Sri Lanka has been included in the national accounts, and it was 212.8 billion in 2019, which is more than $1 billion. And the ecosystem services and the natural capital provided by Sri Lanka's forest is estimated at $5.6 billion. So we are talking about something which is extremely important and something that should be taken very seriously in our future, development process. Now, unfortunately for us, the forest cover in the country is declining, and most of it has been for large infrastructure projects, agriculture, plantations, roads, dams, human settlements, etc. We are also a very highly, human development settlement is also very high. And the main concern for sustenance and protection of natural forests have included deforestation, which is coming right on top, land degradation, soil erosion, illegal felling, wildlife poaching and mining, forest fires, and degradation of coastal forests. So all these do not provide very good news for us. In fact, the value of the forest is far exceeding actually, and we the country is going ahead, doing a lot of damage to these forest ecosystems. Now, this also results in what Ravi mentioned previously. They have called landslides, soil degradation, flooding, loss of biodiversity, loss of habitats, pollution, and it's the devastating impacts of these have been seen in the country in the last 10 years. And also most of the people who are affected by these is the poor people who live in very vulnerable areas. Now, Sri Lanka is also very high in the climate index, and we are one of the 10 most vulnerable countries where climate impacts are concerned, because of course, because we are a coastal environment, the sea is right around us, and the impacts of climate change would be seen in these vulnerable habitats. Now, given that scenario, we also have a lot of policies, strategies, programs in place to protect our forest cover. And chief among these are the Fauna and Flora Protection Ordinance. We have the Forest Ordinance. We have also got the National Environmental Act. And more recently, we have got the our nationally determined contributions have been updated for the upcoming COP26, which the Sri Lankan government will be represented. And we have made a pledge that we will increase our natural forest cover to 32% by 2030. Now, these are nice, pledges to make, but how we do it is the next question. Now, the previous forest sector master plan, which was from 1995 to 2020, unfortunately didn't bring up all the results that it envisaged, and it is now being updated. And the new forest sector master plan for the period 2021 to 2030 is being developed. And I think some of our private sector members who are in this audience may have, come up with, being a part of this thing. Now, the national determined contributions, or the NDCs, states that we would increase forest cover of Sri Lanka up to 32% by 2030, and identifying land for reforestation and forestation. Now, this is a good augurs well for our, private sector, because as you know, I represent Biodiversity Sri Lanka, and we have about 90 members who are within this network. Now, we have done a recent survey in 2021 around June and found that the highest priority accorded by our members is to invest in forest ecosystem restoration. So that is a very positive sign. And we have an online portal which is called Life Commitment, which enables our members to put up the projects that they're undertaking in different sectors. Now, 50% of our members have already put in their projects, and I'm happy to say that that is about 45 of our member companies. And currently, there are about 35% of the projects that have been listed there are for reforestation, afforestation projects. And that is 48 projects of 160 projects there. So, I can see that, as our private sector is very keen to be involved in reforestation projects. And I can give you a couple of examples. We have actually what we promote is multi-partner projects, public-private partnerships. And we have got one which is quite a landmark in the Kanneliya Conservation Forest, where 10 of our members have invested together a large sum of money to the tune of about 40 million rupees to reforest a section of the Kanneliya rainforest. Now, this is really unique because it is also going to come up with some biodiversity credits, which companies can use in trading, and also to, if they are sort of biodiversity is being declining in an area that they're working in, they can use this to sort of trade, and we are working on that type of thing. So my message to this audience is that the country is pulling together to go forward with a 32% forest cover. There are investment programs. The private forest department is keen to get the private sector involved. And the NDCs are also giving us more data on where the degraded forests are and where the deforestation is happening and where forestation should be done. And also we have got the private sector ready and geared towards this. So it is not the doom and gloom scenario that I can predict here. It's something that is quite positive, and we are happy to be of assistance in this endeavor. So it's over to you, Ravi, with those messages.
Thank you very much, Shirani. Really appreciate your point, and I also appreciate the key opportunities that we can move with. The key point I also want to make today to everyone listening in today is that we understand that forest cover is important for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you have no rainforest, you're going to be not having rain. I mean, we didn't call rainforest We didn't name them rainforests by chance. And I've already told you that the global oxygen levels are getting depleted after Brazil wiped out over 30-40% increase of destroying the Amazon in the last 4 to 5 years. So the forest cover gives us the oxygen that then links with the hydrogen that gives us water. Forests also absorb toxic air. Forests also contribute to keeping planet cooler if the temperatures keep rising. So there are many, many reasons. And also agriculture is based on forest cover. So we need to understand that we have a situation. Shirani also mentioned a very important factor, which is about nationally determined commitments. Now, in 2015 December, the 196 countries which signed up to the Paris Agreement committed to what was then described as nationally determined commitments to achieve and keep our temperatures pretty much below 1.5 degrees by exiting fossil fuels. However, I can tell you as at today, 2021, if you read the UNEP gap emissions report that just came out, the nations who made these commitments in December 2015 are nearly 70% off or missing the targets they were going to achieve by 2021. 70% of the targets. And now we have to achieve the 70% we missed and achieve the balance 100% that we have to achieve between 2020 and 2030. So what are we doing about this? My next two panelists are from the private sector, running the plantation sectors for Hilly's group and also for Aiken Spence Holdings. And what I'm going to challenge both of them to do is to share with you what they are doing specifically in their companies to be part of the solution, not to be part of the pollution. And also, once again, to do so with urgency for the climate emergency, because this is no longer the word climate change like we used to talk about. This is now a code red for humanity and a climate emergency. We are all keeping our eyes and ears open to listen to what's going to happen at COP26 in Glasgow next week. However, the question is, will they be bold enough to now mandate exiting coal power once and for all? From what I can see, there are already 9 countries objecting to that. Now, I can tell you, there is no business in a destroyed planet. So if anyone is planning on GDP growth and business profitability in a destroyed planet after we cross 1.5 degrees centigrade, those profits, I'm not sure where they're going to find them. So with that, I'm going to invite Mr. Dr. Roshan Rajadure to talk about what they are doing specifically to be part of the solution and not the pollution. Roshan, over to you.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Ravi, and good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. The brief that I have got to discuss with you within the 7 minutes allocated to me is to explain the current status of Hilly's plantations in terms of renewable energy transition to 70% by 2030 and the status of our science-based targets for renewable energy. So just to give a very brief introduction to the sector, Hilly's plantations, we a portfolio of 60 estates of tea, rubber and other crops, covering a land mass of 26,000 hectares, hosting a population of almost 140,000 people. And we are placed from the sea level, from Gaul to the highest mountain heights of Nuvareli at 7,000 feet. So our estates are dispersed in about 11 varying agroecological regions. And we represent a very critical sector, which is dependent on rainfall, and it's a vegetative crop, which is harvested weekly, and any single or any simple or any small change in the temperature has a significant effect on our crop patterns and thereby consequential effects on the quality of life and the earnings of the large numbers of people who are dependent on this industry for their sustenance. If you look at our industry, we have very difficult optimal climatic requirements like temperature, annual precipitation, pH values, and soil moisture and relative humidity ratios. But science and research has found that any increase in temperature will have a significant impact on yields, and it will impact in the sense that it will reduce the yields. And rainfall also, over time, any reduction in rainfall by about 100 millimeters will have a significant impact in reducing the yields. Only silver lining is increase in ambient carbon dioxide. They have projected that it will increase the tea yields. So, so we have to be very, very critically conscious about the impact of 1.5 degree increase. And if you look at the energy mix in the Hilly's plantation sector, out of about 700 million megajoules, you can see that firewood consumes about 83%, and we have electricity about 10%, and gasoline 2%, and diesel 4%. These are current status. And in going forward, our Hilly's journey to net zero, as we can explain to you all, we started this journey in 2003, and we had a conversion to mini hydro plants. We commissioned all available mini hydro plants in our plantations. And in 2011, we transformed all fossil fuel boilers to firewood boilers. And in 2012, we started a focused sustainable fuel wood and timber planting program. And in 2017, we migrated to converting all our factory rooftops to solar rooftops in tea and rubber factories. And this work is ongoing. And in 2018, the Hilly's plantation sector committed to UN climate neutral initiative. And in 2019, we started the ecosystem restoration project, and we committed to science-based targets initiative. Under this project, we tied up with Rotary International, and we started planting 1 million trees in the sensitive highlands of our country, where the watersheds and where all the riverine water systems originate. And we also partnered with the government of Sri Lanka and started restoring with indigenous plants the Devons and St. Clair Falls area. And in 2020, the 1 million tree program was ongoing with Rotary International, and we were able to co-opt in 2021 Hilly's PLC, one of the largest conglomerates in Sri Lanka, to do their corporate sustainability project in planting a program called Kirulu, where they reforest and afforest all the lands in our plantation areas initially, and they are onwards extending outwards. And in 2021, we achieved climate neutral status of UN Climate Neutral Now initiative, and science-based target was verified and approved. So this is our journey, Hilly's Plantations journey to net zero. And already we have scored some significant achievements. We have done scope 1, we are planning to reduce by 50% in scope 1 and 2, and in scope 3, 34.2% in our science-based targets. Next. So we have to achieve 50.4% reduction, but already in scope 1, we have achieved well over our target by achieving 7.2%. And in terms of low carbon and zero emission, we have reduced the energy consumption by 8%, and we have renewable energy consumption also improved by 71%. So our significant climate actions, we have follow a strategy of adaptation, mitigation, and creating value. Because ours is an agricultural enterprise, we concentrate a lot on adaptation of the existing climatic condition, and by following good agricultural practices and soil fertility practices, we try to mitigate the adverse effects of the climate emergency that is thrust upon us. We are very particular in enhancing the fertilizer use efficiency. That's one of our core targets that we have identified, and we try to incorporate organic matter, bulk fertilizer, bulk matter into our soils to enhance the soil fertility status, thereby reducing the application of synthetic fertilizer. So we follow integrated plant nutrition practices. Then we have adaptation methods, having various good agricultural practices to offset the initial effects of climate change. We have been recognized as an energy efficient company, and we have won some awards in keeping with our focus. But we are most pleased to report that our commitment to the green world or green agri practices, and mainly to science-based targets initiative. So that is very briefly what Hilly's plantations have done. And I'm sure there will be a lot of questions on more specifics, and I'll be willing to answer that during the question and answer time. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Roshan. And I want to just take one key point he made and share it with all of you. And that key point is that Hilly's group, as you heard, has begun to exit its fossil fuel cohort of energy. And that is the most important story that we need to discuss. So with that, I'm going to now ask our last panelist, Mr. Bhatya Balamulla of Acres Plantations, to share with us what their company has achieved.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope my voice is clear.
Yes.
Right, thank you. Believe in science, implement science, and live with science. I think if you believe in science and live with science, we wouldn't have been able to have a session like this. Because we are not living in science and believe in science, only all these problems have occurred. So good morning. What my topic today is to tell a small story of how energy revolution has occurred at LPTA Plantation. As my colleague who mentioned, we are in a very in a business which are very volatile to all weather patterns. As Dr. Ravi Fernando said, in 2003, we decided that we want to be part of the solution, not to be part of the problem. Just to give a small description of my company, we are a small company compared to other companies, having a land extent of 8,000 hectares, covering all three regions of upcountry, low country, and mid country. We have a population of 34,000 on the plantation and a labor force of 5,800. We are a public listed company. In 1997, LPTA Plantation was taken over by Eck & Spence Plantation Management. And since then, we have been managing this company. We have 13 estates, 7 down and 6 in up and mid region. Our core business is tea, rubber, palm oil, and also we have diversified into various other aspects like non-plantation as well as mini agriculture like strawberries and also adventure park. Actually, we started our sustainable journey in 2017. Although we started in a lighter manner in our renewable aspect of hydropower in 2003, we really started our sustainable journey in 2017. The company took a decision. We shouldn't be a plantation management company. We should be a sustainable management company that managing our resources. So in 2017, we took a firm decision to go and develop 6 SDG goals in our company. So I'm not going to, as I was told, to only talk about few things that we are doing, 1 or 2 things that we are doing in the company. I will only talk about that aspect without going and mentioning all what we are doing under this sustainability theme. We believe in people, planet, and profit. We have developed, 295 new housing units for 1,033 beneficiaries. we save rainwater, and we also generate renewable energy within the company. Our main two topics to be taken to the other companies, it's use renewable energy as to generate electricity, and also to be self-sufficient in your sustainable forestry to generate your own thermal energy. So we took a decision to be self-sufficient in our thermal energy by cultivating 166 hectares of various type of bamboos and timber. As you all know, the timber is going to be very precious. We have changed all our boilers into steam boilers within the company to have less usage of firewood and to exit from all other fossil fuels. So on that aspect, we had to have our own firewood or the requirement of biomass to feed our tea factory boilers. So we'll be self-sufficient in 2030 by cultivating over 200 hectares of biomass to use for our usage. In regard to solar energy or renewable energy, we were the first plantation company to go into renewable energy or solar energy on one of our plantation factory roof, that in UP Cork Estate. Since then, we have invested 327 million rupees for a 2,516 kilowatt capacity. We have already implemented 6 projects on roofs, and 9 projects on roof, and another 7 projects to come. We are currently generating with hydro 4.46 megawatts with 3 major projects running on the plantations. Also, we have gone into energy efficiency by introducing variable feed drives, and I'm happy to say we generate 132% of our energy requirement within the company up to date now. So we are a carbon negative company, and this is not the end of the journey. We still keep on developing our renewable energy targets, going into estate bungalow roof, which we have started already, and every building within the company where the solar can be fixed will be fixed before 2030. That's our target. And also we have signed with International Wind Power Development Company a joint venture to have a wind power project in Sri Lanka. As my time is over, I will not go into the balance part of the things what we have done, but these are the 2 major things that I have to mention. To mitigate the climate emergency, we have gone into generate renewable energy, which is sufficient to the company, and also generate our own biomass for the thermal energy. I'm ready to answer many questions, as Dr. Rajadure said in the Q&A session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bhatia. Thank you very much. And I want to just make one key point from what Mr. Dr. Bhatia mentioned. If we understood the science, we won't be in this situation. And 21st century leaders are those who understand science and not deny science. And one can make the summation that between 1987, when the Brundtland report was presented to the United Nations, to today, it's 34 years. And in these 34 years, what have we done about exiting fossil fuels, which is the cause of the climate emergency? What we have done worldwide is increase the amount of fossil fuel use, even though everyone has known for the last 34 years that we should have exited fossil fuels if we were one bit serious about the science. So that's the key message I want to give all of you. You don't have to be a scientist, but both Roshan and Bhatia and Shirani have demonstrated, I'm not sure if any of them are scientists, but they have all understood and respected the science. And I'm proud to say every one of them is giving science-led leadership in their organizations. That is what is required in the 21st century. So with that overview of the sessions we've done, I want to open up the floor now to questions. And I have some questions which I can see on the platform. So I'm going to open this question to the panelists also. And the first question we have is from Shashikala Vijay Sirivardhana. And she says, I want to pose a general question to the panel. The president of Sri Lanka made a public commitment for no more coal. However, the CEB and the relevant ministry are still going forward with its plans. How do you tackle this problem? The CEB has for many years monopolized the coal national power strategy of Sri Lanka. Are there any international examples that could shed some light on this power struggle? So I'm going to probably invite Dr. Roshan and to make a few comments on this, and I will also add some comments at the end. Roshan, in the without let's call a spade, but at the same time, let's do it with tact. Over to you, Roshan.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi. I remember old adage by Margaret Thatcher, never speak on a subject that you know nothing of. So I think I will respectfully pass that question to Shirani, who will be well versed to answer that, because I'm in plantation agriculture. I have not much in-depth knowledge about coal. Over to you, Shirani.
Shirani, go for it.
Okay, at least I can say something positive. Because as you said, Ravi, Sri Lanka presented its updated nationally determined contributions to the UNFCCC in July. And for us, one of them is that the country will be 70% renewable energy by 2030, and to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050 in electricity generation, and with a commitment to no capacity addition by coal power plants. So at least the policy decision in place. So whatever the CEB does, this is the government of Sri Lanka's stand. So I think we have a foot to stand on, Ravi. So which has never been there before. So I think, in response to the lady who asked the question, I think we have never reached this stage before. And I think the lobbying for this is also going on. And I don't think the government will be able to reverse this decision, because we are taking this to the UNFCCC debate on the 26th next week. So that's something. Yeah.
Thanks, Shirani. And I want to add a few comments to this point. Number one is that I think we have a science-led president. Otherwise, he wouldn't have wanted to go for this target. The goal that every company on the planet should be focused on is UN SDG number 7 and moving to renewable energy, because I can tell you, once we cross plus 1.5 degrees centigrade, it's no point us then trying to move to renewable energy, because the harm would have been done and the planet's economies would have been devastated. So if anyone listening to this session is interested in being part of the solution, then move to, just like the Roshan and Bhatia mentioned, move to 100% plus renewable energy driven companies. And I can tell you, every single company I'm directly or indirectly involved with, that is the target I set when I am involved with them. And I'm proud to say every single one of the companies I'm having anything to do with have crossed the 75% mark, and all are nearly 100% plus. And in fact, recently I gave a target of 200% to another company, which means we have already got the 140% behind us. So if you are serious about this, then we have, like Shirani said, the president is on our side, no more coal. Then we as companies must also stand up and say, we are not going into taking any energy to our company requirements from coal power. That's what companies should be doing and standing up to this whole story. So second question is from Sharda D'Souza, and he's basically saying, in terms of a question that Roshan has mentioned. Roshan, the question is, Roshan mentioned briefly about the impact of CO2 on the yield of tea plantations. If we reduce CO2 as we envisage by environmentalists, how do we manage that aspect? Roshan, question for you.
Yes, actually, this is a study done by Dr. Vijayaratna of the Tea Research Institute, where he says that increase in ambient carbon dioxide concentration, currently it's about 307 to 400 parts per million to about 600 parts per million, then it would necessarily increase the yield. Yes, that's a fact, but we are not talking it in isolation. While we are doing all the mitigation things, we have to offset whether we are going to increase yields through increase in carbon dioxide or keeping carbon dioxide as a constant, whether we do other steps to increase our yield. So I've just stated a scientific fact, but that does not mean that we support the increase of carbon dioxide to enhance our yield. So as I suggested, our target is to enhance the yield by better use of the existing ecology in terms of rain and soil and moisture preservation by improvement of soil fertility. Just for the people outside the plantation industry, with the government's initiative about going for organic agriculture, almost all the regional plantation companies have initiated integrated plant nutrition practices, just as we did it for 100 years. Otherwise, tea wouldn't have lasted as long as it is doing now. But we intensified, we sort of multiplied our efforts in adding organic matter, bulk manure, green matter to the soil. So that the question is apt to ask me whether that is a way out, but I just stated it as a fact. It is not the only way out.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Roshan. Our next question is very interesting. It's from Dinusha Rajaratna, and I have a very strong view on this, but I'm going to open the question to Bhatia to respond. Actually, most corporates do sustainability activities to get tax benefits, and may I intersperse the word CSR activities to get tax benefits, as well as create corporate image through some activities. My problem is, do all corporates act honestly to protect the environment? So Bhatia, what is your response to that question? And maybe Shirani, you can chip in also. And Arjun?
Yeah, it's a good question. I know there are some companies who might be doing that, to get the tax concession, but I can tell you about Albania Plantations. As we all know, we are all in business. We are not running a charity organization. So whatever we do, we have to get a return on it, right? It's understood. Otherwise, we will not be able to run this organization. So to answer that question now, we especially went because we have a duty to this country to protect our environment and also to mitigate this climate emergency. Otherwise, our business will not be will be in existence in time to come. As Dr. Rajadore said, the crops that we are managing, highly sensitive to all weather conditions. So on that aspects only we have gone in, and also we are making profits out of it. If I'm to inform, for this year we have got about 76 million profit on renewable energy. So that's the story. So we are investing on this, because we wanted to be part of the climate to mitigate the climate emergency. At the same time, we are making profits.
Thank you. Shirani, you would like to chip in there? Yeah, sure. Roshan, I'll come to you as well.
Just to sort of, add to what was said, we have been working with the companies for a while now, and we are seeing a definite shift from corporate social responsibility to shared value. So basically, we are seeing companies integrating biodiversity and environment as a matter of their core business, especially companies in tourism and agriculture, in plantations, because obviously, as was said by Bhatia, it makes business sense to them. So a lot of companies are now shifting, and it is a very good sign. And of course, you do get the companies that are quite careless about this. But I think the larger hand holding is important in the value chain, and the MSMEs in particular, that we have to bring up to speed are the responsibility of the larger companies. And Ravi, you have a lot of experience in this. So basically what I want to say is, larger companies, please support the smaller ones, the parts of your value chain that may not be sustainable, and which of course then creates an issue. So good positive trends are being seen, and the Sri Lankan private sector is holding good where this subject is concerned.
Okay, Roshan, you had something to add?
Thank you for giving me the space. I will be very specific. The very specific nature of our industry, that is tea and rubber plantations, requires, it's a necessity, it's a requirement that we protect our ecosystem, soil, water, the environment. So more than any tax concession, we as agriculturists, we need to keep our ecosystem at a right balance. Otherwise, we are out of business in the first place. And if we are out of business, not a lot of, in the plantation sector, I'm talking of the private regional plantation companies, 1 million people are dependent on this industry. So that is a way that will diminish their quality of life and earnings, and it will have social implications. Therefore, first, it is a business necessity for our crop. So that is, we are not keeping an eye on tax concessions. Secondly, we have found benefits, as my colleague said, complementary. When we protect the environment, when we protect the ecosystem, it has a complementary effect on our crop, and down the line, everybody benefits, everybody gains. It's a win-win. And the benefit we get from tax, I'll be very brutally honest, I think over the last decade, plantation industry has gone through such a bad time. We are not making profits to pay taxes. So it is a essential requirement to keep our business alive and sustainable, apart from other benefits. So that is our focus. It's a requirement, like fertilizer, like good agricultural practices, preserving and protecting and enhancing the environment is part of our day-to-day work.
Excellent. Thanks, Roshan. I just want to make one quick comment before we get into our next question. In 2007, when I was studying at Cambridge, we had a ceremony called the Death of CSR. And we actually we had a coffin painted with the term CSR on it. And all the students who were doing our course at Cambridge, we walked down Trumpington Street in Cambridge with this coffin with the term CSR on it. So I want to tell you that the word CSR is dead. And if there are any companies that are being led on the basis of doing good to look good, as opposed to doing what is needed to stave the climate emergency and code red for humanity, you should not be in business in the first place. Because then you are a non-science leader who is basically out there to make profits at any cost. The world does not have room for non-science-led leadership in nations or in business ever again. We have seen the disasters that have happened in many countries as a result of that. So let me reassure everyone, what we are looking for is science-led 21st century leadership that is driving forward, impacting the code red for humanity. Okay, the next question I have is for Arjun. Arjun, the key question to you is, India too has a massive dependence on coal power. What is the Indian government doing in terms of exiting coal power with urgency? And in terms of COP26, what kind of commitments is India going to make?
India is one of the G20 countries, and this is important because the G20 represents 80% of global emissions. So if we are expecting a meaningful reduction of emissions in the next decade, we will have lost forever the possibility of reaching 1.5 degrees. India, in its nationally determined contribution, as you're aware, committed to achieve 175 gigawatts of installed renewable energy capacity by 2022, which includes 100 gigawatts of solar, 60 gigawatts of wind, and 10 of biopower, and 5 of hydro. So in August this year, it was reported that India achieved a milestone of 100 gigawatts renewable energy capacity. Coal, of course, continues to remain a part of the energy mix currently, but really the Paris Agreement outlined India's renewable energy ambitions. India has also enhanced its renewable energy ambitions to 450 gigawatts by 2030, but this is yet to be reflected in an updated nationally determined contribution. On our part, the Global Compact Local Network in India is implementing the Climate Ambition Accelerator and getting companies to commit to science-based targets. And it would be important for sustainability initiatives and businesses in India really to take this momentum forward. So we're hoping at COP26 that India will potentially submit an updated
that are dependent on coal, like India, like China, even Germany, like Brazil, like Bangladesh, Poland, Turkey, begin to move to exit coal power. And that is really one of our big wishes. Okay. So I think we will, at this point, what I want to do is, we have about 12 minutes more. If there's one message that each of you want to give our audience of national and business leaders, what is the one message, and give it in 1 minute. So I'll start with Arjun. If there's one message you want to give the business sector of Sri Lanka, what is the one message you want to leave with them when they move forward?
I think it's very, very important for business in Sri Lanka to join the Science-Based Targets Initiative and to set credible emission reductions targets. I would also invite businesses to join tomorrow's launch of the Net Zero Standard. It'll provide some guidance on how businesses can set forward-looking, long-term, as well as short-term targets aligned with net zero. So this is my key message to Sri Lankan businesses.
Thanks, Arjun. Become a science-led leader who then realizes we need science-based targets. If you're not a science-led leader, you'll be like the non-science-led leaders who have run the world for the last 34 years, who have not exited coal power, who have not exited fossil fuels for 34 years since the Brundtland Agreement. So be a science-led 21st century leader who is able to understand how important science-based targets are. Okay, let's go to Shirani. What's your one big message for the team, for everyone listening in today?
My one big message is in the subject that I was given to talk today on forestry. Since reforestation and ecosystem restoration seems to be one of the highest priorities for the private sector, do it not ad hoc, just don't go out there planting trees. Look out for the places that need to be reforested. There are vulnerable areas in Sri Lanka, that catchments, watersheds, areas that need river banks that need reforestation. Do it scientifically, as was mentioned, and under guidance of maybe an agency that will give you the guidance, not just ad hoc and then say, I planted 1,000 trees or 1,000,000 trees, which really makes no sense. And also see that you contribute to the SDGs, the Rio Conventions, UNFCCC, CBD. The Sri Lanka has got various targets it's trying to achieve. And also the private sector's contributions are not included in these national reports that go out to these conventions. So let's get our voice heard. Let's get all our work into the government's policy documents that go out to the various conventions and stand as a voice that works towards national priorities.
Excellent. Thanks, Shirani. Big message coming to us. If you're in the private sector, remember, if you're only going to start a tree planting campaign today, it'll take another 10 years before those trees start working for us. Start by at least conserving the forest cover you have. I always say, please make sure that we are ready to conserve what we have and then reforest, because if you don't conserve what we have and if we keep destroying the forest cover on one side and start putting some plants down and saying, we have done a big deal. I'm telling you, that is greenwash to the power 25. For heaven's sake, the time for greenwash is over, ladies and gentlemen. We are now facing a code red for humanity. We are facing a climate emergency. Please stop using the word climate change. We are not in a climate change era. We are in a climate emergency era. And work and behave like we are in an emergency. If you take a patient to the emergency section and the doctors come 24 hours later, what is going to happen to that patient? That patient is going to die. What I'm seeing in the world today are world leaders and business leaders who have heard the term emergency, who have heard the term code red for humanity, and are postponing doing what they have to by 2025 and postponing targets to 2040, 2050, 2060. It's a bit like the patient in the emergency room. These patients are all going to die. Okay, Bhatia, what is your big message for the one single message to everyone listening in today?
I will talk about climate emergency, Doctor, as you said. My message is be part of the solution, not be part of the problem. At least in a smaller way, be part of the solution, because we are, as you very correctly said, it's an emergency. Although I did not talk about, in my discussion, we are in a big way, preserving rainwater harvesting, one of the games that we have championed in our company. So even in a smaller way, do something to mitigate this climate emergency. That's my message.
Thank you. So let's treat the emergency like it's an emergency and not like how world leaders and most companies are treating it, like it's just another one of those mornings in the park. So please understand, we are in the emergency room. We are in the ICU. We are in the CCU. And when you are in the CCU and the ICU, you don't behave like you got 25 years to do this. And young Greta Thunberg is so right. She says, our house is on fire. And the sad thing is a lot of national leaders and world leaders are hoping to call the fire engine 10 years from now. And I'm wondering what they are going to put, what fire will be left, because everything will be ashes by the time the fire engines come on. Roshan, what is your one message to everyone listening in? We have about 6 minutes to go.
Okay, I think I do not have to elaborate on the climate emergency status that we are all faced with. I think all of us are aware. So in this forum and other forums, each of us at different levels of leadership has in our hands a part of the solution. So I think we can do and we must do whatever is within our reach, whatever is within our capacity to mitigate the impact or adverse effects of this climate emergency. That we must do. And what we do should be scientific and science-led or science-based. So we can do in bits and pieces. It's a feel-good factor, but I don't think it will complement the solution that we are all looking at. So my plea is that all of us can do something. Let us do what we can do in a scientific or science-led rational basis.
Excellent. Thanks, Roshan. Very clear message to every one of you listening out there. Be science-led. Get advice from people who understand the science. Please don't be someone who says, I don't need scientific advice. I know how to do this. I have done this the last 50 years, 30 years, 40 years. That's how we are going to continue doing things. I'm telling you, that is what has happened to the planet. And for 35 years, 34 years, we basically ignored the science of the climate emergency. So I think we have some amazing messages. We have about 3-4 minutes to go. I want to quickly thank the panel for the very decisive and incisive messages each of you gave everyone listening in. And I'm sincerely hoping if you are sitting on the other side today listening to this, there are about 120 of you listening today. Don't think that this is not an emergency. Behave like it is an emergency. Don't postpone putting the fire out for the next 20 years and 30 years. You'll be only having ashes, and no business is possible in an ashes situation. So my final 2 words, comments are, number 1, do what you have to do and do it with urgency by 2025. Don't wait for beyond 2025. because the World Meteorological Organization has already given us a code red and said that is when we are most likely to cross 1.5 degrees centigrade. Now, if you are 3 years away from a code red, then you don't put targets to be achieved in 2050 and 2060 and 2070. For heaven's sake, start looking at 2025 as your new cutoff point if you want to impact the climate emergency. Number one. Number two, please understand there's no business in a destroyed planet. So if everyone is planning to have fantastic profits, fantastic GDP growth, massive bank accounts, I'm telling you the money that you have in those bank accounts will not be worth an ounce, because they'll be wiped out when 54 to 67 trillion dollars of the world GDP of $90 trillion is wiped out. So please don't think that getting great profits this quarter and the next quarter is what we need. We need to have a planet where there are people and where we can do business. So if you want to secure the planet, do that. Lastly, I want to say that the last point I want to leave with all of you as we get to the last minute is to say, understand the word science-led. That has become, to my mind, the biggest issue in terms of why the world has not been able to address the climate emergency, because a majority of the leaders of the world, unfortunately, haven't been science-led. If they were science-led, are you telling me that 34 years later, we will yet be talking about exiting fossil fuels? Are you crazy? We would have taken our game out of fossil fuels 10 years after we knew it should have happened. But fossil fuel use has increased in the world, which means we have not had science-led leadership at any level. If we had science-led leadership, we won't be having a climate emergency. Now, the question is, have we at least now understood we need to act with urgency to impact the climate emergency with science-based targets, as mentioned by Arjun, understanding the science, as mentioned by both Arjun, Bhatia and Roshan, and understanding that what Shirani said, the ecosystem is such an essential part of ensuring we are going to be part of the 1.5 degree centigrade matter. So ladies and gentlemen, please, if there's one word you take off from this entire panel, 1.5 degrees, do what you have to do by 2025. And for heaven's sake, begin to understand that we are in a climate emergency and understand the science. Thank you very much, Shirani, Arjun, Bhatia, and Roshan, for giving off your valuable time. And I'm thrilled to see that we have science-led leadership in one of our most important sectors of Sri Lanka, which is plantations. And that gives us all hope for the future and the great work that Shirani does with Biodiversity Sri Lanka. Thank you very much. And let's start behaving like we have an emergency. Thank you very much.